Hello, everyone. My name is Dawn Muller. I'm an assessment consultant with WPS, and I'm here today with Dr. Jennifer Baker, who will be conducting our webinar entitled Executive Functioning, Enhancing Student Success. So, Dr. Baker, you are a nationally certified school psychologist, a licensed specialist in school psychology in Texas, a board certified behavior analyst and licensed behavior analyst. And Dr. Baker has experience working with students and training staff in both school and clinical settings. She's served in a variety of different roles, including child and adolescent caseworker, behavior specialist, school psychologist, and director, and currently is serving as the executive director of a special education program within a very large urban public school district in Austin, Texas. So Dr. Baker is very passionate about bridging that gap between research and implementable practices within the K to 12 school systems. Thank you so much for agreeing to participate in yet another webinar with WPS. Dr. Baker was previously featured in the Behavior Playbook for School Psychologists, a three-part series, and now will be featured on January 29th for Executive Functioning, Enhancing Student Success. So thank you for joining us and joining me. Dr. Baker, what led you to the field of psychology and behavior, and more specifically, that area of executive functioning?
Absolutely. So thank you first and foremost for WPS for having me again. You might be glutton for punishment. So, but no, I enjoy it so much. And again, thank you. And I appreciate being invited back to do something else. So this specific webinar looks at executive functioning, and I really like it because it does have great applicability to my psychology background and my behavioral background. I've always had an interest in learning why people do the things that they do, why they think, they feel, they act in a certain way. And so psychology has really helped me with that and understanding a little bit more. And then behavior added an extra layer where I learned how to observe and how to take data and how to analyze that data to determine the purpose behind why people do, what they do. I'm not saying the answer is always completely obvious. There's definitely trial and error to it, but it's always been a passion for me. So yeah, so whether it's through assessment, through counseling, research, consultation, or even delivering professional development such as this, I really enjoy supporting those in need. And executive functioning is just one of those that can help all of us, but most importantly, the students that we serve in K through 12 settings.
Well, thank you so much. And as a fellow school psychologist, I thank you for your contribution to the field. So thank you so much.
Oh yes, I love helping out fellow school psychologists. I love helping out RBCBAs, really any educators. I love doing teacher in services and helping our principals and succeed. So I know my passion is working with children, but a majority of my jobs now is working with educators who help children. So by proxy, I'm still helping out as much as I can.
That's great. And that kind of led me to the next question. So, in your practice, are you primarily focused on children, adults, or both? And then, what are some of the different challenges that face those demographics and those who really struggle with executive functioning issues?
Yeah. Yes, of course. In the past, I've worked in a variety of different settings with diverse populations. I have found that my niche is definitely working with children, specifically students who have a suspected disability or ones that might have a disability. So really working with our special education population is my favorite and my career path, at least at this time. So as you mentioned, I've been a school psychologist, a behavior analyst. I worked in community outreach programs. I was a social worker for a time, worked in higher education, so adjunct teach sometimes. So a large variety of experiences where executive functioning is at play for all of those populations that I interact with. Currently, I worked as an executive director for special education, and I really want to work. I really have, a desire to help educators better help kids in the schools. And so teaching them executive functioning skills as early as possible in their educational journey is of interest to me. And so that's kind of led me at least to that point. Executive functioning for kids are directly impact their ability to succeed, manage daily life tasks, navigate those social environments. And so, really helping them develop self regulation, problem solving skills, and their overall well being will be impacted. So, these are crucial areas of development that require that direct instruction, rehearsal, and practice. And I
Absolutely.
can't get enough of it. I can't.
That's
really
fantastic.
helping really helping those that need those help, and that's not traditionally taught in educator programs, for teachers, for aspiring principals, and even school psychologists. That's not something that's directly taught, so that's something that I think that I could help bring to the table.
Fantastic. And so on January 29th, are those some of the things that you'll be sharing with our practitioners who will be tuning in? What will you be highlighting?
Oh, absolutely. So this webinar was actually designed for practitioners who work with school-aged children. It highlights interventions, strategies, and how support could lead to meaningful improvements to help a student's academic and behavioral performance.
Excellent. We're excited for it and really looking forward to it. So I hope all of our viewers really tune in. I know your previous webinars have been so well received and definitely
Oh,
beneficial.
great.
And I definitely benefited from them as a practitioner as well. So, in terms of a great success story, do you have one that really sticks out throughout your years of addressing executive functioning in individuals?
That is very difficult. It's just such a hard one because there's so many success stories. Um, Watching the journey of someone who had an executive functioning skill or a performance deficit, and then finally seeing them be able to succeed independently is just an incredible thing. I mean, that's a pinnacle of what we all want, right? Like to be independent in our any skill that we have and any um, activity or task that we're performing, to be able to stand on our own without that support from others. Every student that I work with is completely different. For example, some might require support in areas of prioritizing, planning, organization. So I might start by teaching that student like the importance of why we plan. What's the purpose of this? Why am I even doing it? And how that skill might assist them in maybe like a current or future life scenario or task. And then we might integrate the use of a daily planner, a visual reminder tool. So slowly they'll start learning that maybe that planner will be useful to break down assignments into smaller, manageable tasks that they can accomplish, and that the brain can kind of process and execute in a more productive and efficient way. And then maybe for the visual reminders we give them, it helps with upcoming deadlines. We could use color coordinated calendars, sticky notes. These students are so proficient with technology that half the things that I suggested them they already know about because they use on their cell phone, or maybe they're not using it as efficiently as we would like or as often as we like. So helping them and use these type of tools and strategies will increase their ability to do many things, and inadvertently you might be helping something else. All of these executive functioning skills don't happen in a vacuum, and they're not mutually exclusive. So you might be intervening for planning and organization, but at the same time the use of a daily planner and visual reminders are going to help you with time management. They're going to help you with storing information and being able to retrieve that, self-regulating your feelings of feeling anxious and overwhelmed, that I have too many tasks and I can't accomplish it. So it's pretty cool when you are able to assess the deficit and then plan for the need, and you might impact all these other great areas. And once you fade that support and intervention from that student and they're able to do it all on their own, it's
Goes
my help is no longer needed, and an educator's help is no longer needed. And that's what we want for all our kids, to be successful in life, post-secondary, and to do it on their own. So
Absolutely. That's all we want for everyone is to just really function independently and be able to, you know, prioritize and be successful in life for sure. So thank you again for your contributions to the field. In terms of are there any changes that you would like to see practitioners make in terms of their identification or assessment and currently the way things that they're evaluating for executive functioning issues or how they intervene with those facing those executive functioning difficulties?
and following the research that our wonderful academia folks have and clinical folks have put together, there's been so much growth in that field over the past few years. Of course, there's also several challenges that they've experienced too for researchers and practitioners. Executive functioning is complex. It's very multifaceted, and the use of these skills interact with many things. Environmental, cognitive, and developmental factors are at play. And it continues to be this nebulous concept, which is what we'll talk about a little bit in the webinar. Everyone's got a different definition and theory and framework for what that might be, and it continues to change. So it's always an interesting field. I'll tell you that. It's always like, okay, what's the latest and greatest, which actually is pretty frequent in school psychology and behavior, even education. What's the newest that's out there in terms of the changes for executive functioning interventions? Uh, it's really important to look at the changes with just tailoring your intervention to that individual child. There's no one size fits all. That's again why it's so nebulous, because it's what might work for one student's not going to work for others. So it involves a lot of cognitive processes that we're not quite sure exactly what the correct answer is. It's challenging to design those interventions that effectively target unique deficits within each individual. So you have to have a basic understanding of that kid's or students' cognitive profile so that we can really put intensive resources and supports in place, and ensuring that they're developmentally appropriate. Like I said, like what works for a kindergartner is not going to work for a 10th grader. Particularly in this webinar, we're going to go over the developmental changes and what happens at certain levels. And that might not be the same for every child, but it's a general framework to look at and say, hey, maybe we should be learning these things earlier on, and we can intervene here so that student won't struggle further along down the continuum of their educational journey. So, in terms of evolution of the field, I would say it's, again, just as executive functioning is very complex. Research has gone from saying that, we had a single cognitive function, and now they have a broader perspective. There's many different executive functionings working within a larger network of interacting processes. So maybe a more holistic view, and we didn't always know what could be contributing to some of these performances that we saw, again, whether that's time management, organization, flexibility, any of those things. And so now they might think it's not only cognitive factors being involved, but also emotional ones as well. There with, all of our wonderful physicians and doctors, there's been advances in neuroimaging to show that it's coming from many parts of the brain where they thought it was maybe more localized before. So really understanding the changes within the neural pathways within the brain.
Absolutely.
There's been a focus on I know it's fascinating.
Especially with the amount of digital technology that even such young, our children are exposed to at such younger ages, and those changes and the evolution that's happening is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it helps them actually. I mean,
Right.
a lot of the research is looking at the technology advances and measuring response inhibition and measuring these things that, we quantify as an executive functioning, and how technology, in the brain, and how students and children respond to it. It's quite amazing.
Yes.
Um, the digital tools that have been helpful for students with executive function and deficits, computer games, apps, visual reality environments have become extremely popular, and these can help with students learning they provide feedback, tailored feedback. Some interventions are made to help students with specific deficits in that area, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think the largest one is really realizing, and the emphasis on early intervention, which is, a large part of why I find executive functioning so interesting, because it's applicable to all students and all children. If we really intervene early, it's a global need, and it would have a preventative effect so that we could, abate some of those really significant deficits later on years for older kids.
Absolutely. And I love that positive spin and approach that, your view of technology, and that it doesn't, we often assume that it's, doing harm, but you really are highlighting, the ability to be able to use things as tools and embrace what we have, and it's our world. So as it
We
stands.
have to. I mean, look at the way that adults learn and the way that adults set reminders on phones. They use timers. I mean, we use so many accommodations for ourselves to be organized, to be goal oriented. And why are we not allowing students to do,
Absolutely.
children to do the same thing? And they can do it better. They can. I mean, they teach us a majority of the time, but also being able to fade those supports too, like yes, you utilize this all the time, but what happens when you don't? And um, yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you. Um, do you have any, this kind of may overlap a little bit, but do you have any quick tips or strategies to recommend to those who are working with this population?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, significant progress has been made. There's still so much more to go. I think continued interdisciplinary collaboration will be essential for improved outcomes for students. My greatest tip again would be to prioritize really early on in a student's educational career that executive functioning skills are important. And what are they? What are their purposes? I do think that there is a direct instruction component to it, whether that be through a multi-systems of you know tiered support where all students get it, and then we look at students that are struggling later on, provide more intensive interventions later because those students needed it beyond what all students were getting. Just again, and behavior is behavior. And so that's what we're seeing from these executive functioning deficits. We're seeing the byproduct. We're seeing that behavior at the end and whether they're being successful or not. So that has to be taught. It's not just something that we are born with. Um,
Right.
so
And
yeah.
it looks different in all of us for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And what I find most beneficial in the webinars or trainings that I attend is that I want applicable resources. I mean, I love listening to innovative ways to solve problems for our field, especially as a practitioner. But I want something tangible. I want something I can hit the ground running with the second that I leave. So any professional development that I'm in, and that the previous ones that I've been in with WPS, as I've included like some type of resource uh, for that particular area. So in this webinar, I'll be including an executive functioning binder that has a bunch of free resources that's in information in electronic form for participants to access anytime. It's got definitions. It's got different resources of how for assessment to really target those specific skills in kids. It's got interventions that are placed specifically for those executive functioning aspects that we'll talk about, and a lot of like research and books and other resources that you might need. I hate going to a training when you're expected to know how to do all these things and take away all of that wonderful knowledge. And this way, it's already in a playbook for you, ready to go.
That is fantastic. And I know I'm appreciative. I know you've offered resources to us in the
Yeah,
past in your previous webinars with WPS. So practitioners love free resources for
yeah.
sure. I know I do.
It's so hard because you go back after a training, you're like, yeah, that was a great training. And what was that thing that person talked about, or what was that said? And so this way it's all gathered for you, because that's my job, is not only to sit here and talk about it, but also so that you don't have to go and look on the internet and search, hey, where do I find this assessment for cognitive flexibility? Where do I find this great thing to send a teacher that might go with the lesson that they're learning that day, or something to that effect? It's just not having everything in a one-stop shop is so much easier. Practitioners are busy every day assessing kids, intervening with kids, doing all the things, all the great things. And they don't have time to be doing that. So that's what is so important about continuing education and professional development, is something that we can give back to them, that it's easier to do their jobs.
That's incredible. And as a fellow practitioner, I am so appreciative not only of your creation of the materials, but also your ability and willingness to share them with us all. So I know this is going to be so exciting for people to tune in on January 29th. And again, it's entitled Executive Functioning, Enhancing Student Success. So we hope you join us on January 29th to hear Dr. Jennifer Baker share all of her fabulous information related to executive functioning. So thank you so much, Dr. Baker, for taking this time with me to just give an overview to our viewers. So
Thank you so much for having me. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Visit WPS today to start unlocking potential.